So a very good afternoon to one and all present here. And we have been already in interaction with each of us. Good to know. And this is our fourth day of the workshop on psychotherapeutic techniques. And today we have our another sweet person, Dr. Lakshmi ma'am, with us as resource person. And on behalf of the Red Pond Educational and Psychological Research Center and Yellow Pond Counseling Center, Madurai, along with Dr. Suresh Kumar Murugesan, I take a chance to welcome you all to today's session. And to know about the resource person, she is a proud alumni of the prestigious Madras University, Annamalai University, IPMS, the Global Open University, and the Bhagwant University. So she is a practicing senior psychologist, psychotherapist, and a counselor. And she has been devoting her life and work in the research of human behavior for over 15 years. So she has made remarkable achievements in the field of psychology, especially in the treatment of psychological disorders, and she has done a lot of advanced and effective therapies. Along with her profession, she has also doing service to Army Wives Welfare Association in Indian Army, along with the service to police force, and she has been doing her service also in some prisons, including the Pulal jail, as you all know. And she has been doing her service to the humanity in the civil community, and she's also doing services for specially abled children, orphanage children, and she has also been working on suicidal prevention. She has played a very important pivotal role in providing service during Chennai floods. So her profile keeps on going like this, and she has been a recipient of prestigious and honorable awards, which counts up to 10. And in the recent year 2020-21, she has achieved the Women Achiever Award for her contribution towards normal and abnormal mental state, perceptual, cognitive, emotional, and social work processes. So, ma'am, we are very proud to have you here. And we are very humbled to listen to you on existential therapy. So, without further ado, I hand over the session to you. Thanks for being here, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Chandra ma'am, and I should thank Suresh sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I know him for the last 3-4 years. We are interacting. Basically, we started interacting for positive psychology inputs. He has certain, actually we share the same wavelength based on the Indian philosophy it is concerned. So my research is based on purely Indian philosophy because I didn't, basically, I don't know, be Indian by Indian or my blood is of pure Indian blood, and therefore I don't want to take anything or borrow anything from them, or it might be probably what is the root of this. When I found out, I ended up in finding out that the roots are all in Indian philosophical content. And actually speaking, I started off as a humanistic therapist, humanistic psychology, as I was much interested with Carl Rogers. So person-centered therapy. So when I started inquiring into, actually I have a habit, I don't know whether it is good or bad, I have a habit, whatever I study, I want to study it from the roots, study it from the base. Otherwise, I will keep myself confused for a long time, and I keep on, thinking over that again and again. So that was the time I wanted to find out what is the difference between that real self and ideal self, and what is that ideal self that Carl Rogers is actually mentioning. So in that search, I actually ended up in reading the Upanishads. And my guru, all my masters, my guru had been so kind enough to me in teaching me this Indian philosophical content. I have traveled across the world, sorry, not the world, not like Chandra ma'am, traveled across India because fortunately, unfortunately, I'm married to an army person. So I have to travel throughout India, but I took it as a positive thing to know about the various cultures. And everywhere I go, this would be my only thing, because right from 2005, I started this search of what is this ideal self. So some around 2006 or 7, I found out that, to find out what is your ideal self or your true identity, I have to read the Indian philosophy, because I couldn't get that in any of the Carl Rogers texts. I talked to masters, and I ended up in learning yoga. and different schools of yoga I learned. And finally, I found out that humanistic therapy itself is a part of existential therapy. So they were actually initially called as existential humanists. And then it took a different turnout, and humanistic therapy specifically came out with Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. They were the last existential philosophers. And because Viktor Frankl, we cannot forget Viktor Frankl when you are talking about existential therapy. So without giving much my own boring stuffs, I would like to share. Yeah. So are you able to view my screen? Yeah, thank you. So this existential therapy, as the name goes, it is purely questions about your own existence, the essence of existence. What am I? Who am I? Why am I living? What is the purpose of my life? The questions of the theory behind existential therapy is that only. So in today's 1 hour, I try to condense whatever little bit I know. So I'm trying to give existentialism in Western philosophy and how existentialism is viewed in Indian philosophy. As I told you earlier, this is one of my favorite topics. And techniques of existential therapy in Western as well as Indian philosophy. So before we go into existential therapy, I would like to give a brief intro about what existentialism is. So it is an attitude, it is an approach where it is believed that every individual has freedom, has liberation, has free will, and to choose whatever he wants in life, and he is responsible for who he is now. That is, we are responsible for who we are now. Whatever we are responsible for who we are. And that is an existentialism is basically an understanding that people have to have about their own self. What is it? Why am I behaving this way? Why am I thinking this way? Why these things are happening to me? Because many times the abnormality is because I am not able to understand why some things are happening to me. So that is the time we start asking questions about why me? Why me? So why me is a question which is answered in existentialism. So understanding of why me, that is the question which is answered in existentialism. So then also it was like understanding why am I here, and now also it is why am I here. But initially we looked at the stars in the sky and asked why am I here. Now we are looking into the Google content, and we are believing more of artificial intelligence than the intuitive wisdom. So earlier people were looking for intuitive wisdom, looking at the stars in the sky. But now we are trying to looking at the artificial intelligence and so that we are moving away from the intuitive wisdom. So when you look at the sky and the stars and look for the intuitive wisdom, existentialism will give you an understanding of we are just participants in our own lives, and we are not just observers. We are not just observing what is happening to us. We are participating in it. Like, for example, when superstar Rajinikanth is participating in the Padayappa film, he is participating in it. He is not an observer. He is taking that role. He is taking that role particularly and playing it well. Padayappa is not Rajinikanth. Rajinikanth is different. But when we look at Padayappa, we see Rajinikanth. That is the question in our existentialism. The same way, when I am in my life, I have different roles to play. As a mother, as a sister, as a wife, as a daughter-in-law, as a sister-in-law. Like this, I have different roles to play. And in my family itself, I have different roles. I am a cook. I am a teacher. I am an ayah. When I do my jadu and poncha, there is no maids now because it is COVID. So I'm an ayah here. Okay. And when I'm taking in the class, I am a teacher. And when I am sitting with the client, I am a psychologist. So everywhere myself, I have different roles to play, and I am actively participating in every role. When I'm cooking, I'm a cook, I'm cooking. I'm not observing how I am cooking. So I am participating in the role. But when I lie down in my bed, who am I? That is the question. Am I a cook? Am I a teacher? Now, at the end of the day, I have finished all my work. When I'm lying down in my bed, who am I? Am I a cook? Am I a daughter? Am I a wife? Am I a mother? Who am I? That is the question, because there also we are participating in some parts which we are going to find out. So it is an understanding that our life has a purpose, has value, has meaning. So to trying to find out that purpose, values, and meaning is what is pure existentialism is about. So it cannot be traced to a single authoritative source, because there are so many philosophers who had contributed to existentialism. And there is no common theoretical or practical basis. Why there is no common? It is purely based on subjective experience. The other day I was hearing Suresh sir talking very clearly with the pakoda. So it is actually came into my mind. You see, something you see and subjective experience, I was actually wondering how am I going to tell? But Suresh sir had given me a very good input on that. Yeah, with the pakoda, I am eating the pakoda. I am eating it. I am enjoying it. How am I enjoying it? How will you know? Unless you eat a pakoda and enjoy it. That is what is a subjective experience. So all the existential philosophy is about subjective experience of understanding the essence of my own true self or my own true nature. Therefore, there is no one single authoritative source. Everyone are existential therapists. Everyone, if you start understanding who you are, then you are an existential therapist. And regarding the practical aspects, based on your own life sittings, based on your own situations in which you are taking up the decisions, taking up the choices, because you have free will to choose. It emphasizes the individual to look within for the solution. Almost it is like Carl Rogers' point, that is, you have your infinite potential and all the problems you have solution. Like in every Indian philosophical content, you can find that samasya ho to samadhan hota hai. Like if there is a problem, there is a solution. So it focuses on the central facts of human existence, self-consciousness, individual consciousness. It is more like the collective consciousness what Carl Jung was talking about, so that we understand that we all are free. And it considers human nature to be flexible and capable of having different kinds of experiences. Only when we are open to those different kinds of experiences, removing the intellectual conviction that we have. So basically, when you are studying existentialism, you have to condition your body to uncondition your mind. So when that unconditioning of mind takes place, then naturally you will understand who you are, because the essence of existence is the existence itself, which is present in all the different states of consciousness. It does not give one definition of one personality of his or her skills and abilities, because it believes that we are limitless, we are infinite, we have infinite potential. We as a person, I as a person think that I am limited. I have only this capacity. I have only that capacity. But if we uncondition our mind and open up our mind, we will understand that this is not a limited thing. I have different spaces. I have different areas of focusing, expansion. I have different areas of expansion, and I am capable of expanding my consciousness into different fields. This we will understand only when we open up our mind. So it considers human potential, and mind has that enormous capacity. It also believes that he who has a why to live can bear with anyhow. If you have understood why you are here, if you have understood what is the purpose of you living here, then you can bear with any kind of house. How am I going to? How am I going to do that? I am going to do that because I have to do that. Existentialism believes like You can take out 101 reasons for not doing a thing. For doing a thing, there is only one reason that I have to do. That's it. So when I believe that I have to do it, and this is the purpose of my life, if I have understood, then how much ever the problem is, I will have the courage to face it and I will overcome all those problems. And because I believe that I am infinite and my human potential is unlimited and I have got enormous capacity. Existential psychotherapy is therefore an attitude towards human suffering. Because that human suffering, how would it look like? There is no manual which describes how a human suffering would look like. It asks deep questions about the nature of your disparity, the nature of the anxiety, the nature of the meaninglessness that we have, the nature of the sadness that we come across, the nature of the loneliness and the isolation that we feel. It deals centrally with the question of meaning, creativity, and love. It asks you to look at the problem from a different perspective, from a different angle. Therefore, existential psychotherapy is an attitude towards human suffering, and it is not just one practical approach. As Carl Jung says, know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be another human soul. So when I am talking to a client, I consider that my soul is talking to that soul, not my intellectual conviction will come in as a barrier. Then in that way, then I am also connected to the intuitive wisdom. In the intuitive wisdom, I will be able to understand his sufferings, and which is what is called as empathy. I understand your feeling, we say, right? In empathy, it is understanding the feelings of the other person. So when I say that I understand your feelings, then actually, am I understanding that feeling? I will be able to understand that feeling if I am able to raise myself above my intellectual convictions. Intellectual convictions are the knowledge that I have for my own self, which I consider that I possess this knowledge. Through this knowledge, I'm trying to understand the suffering. No one can understand the suffering like that way. Unless I have raised myself above the intellectual conviction that I have, I will be really able to understand the suffering of the client who is sitting in front of us. This is about an introduction about existentialism. In Western philosophy, coming to the origin of existentialism, it started in somewhere in the 19th century. So mid of 19th century, you can call usually. So Kierkegaard was one of the famous philosophers, Danish philosophers, who talked about existentialism in the Western country. From where he took, that was the search of me, where I ended up studying Upanishads and Vedas. So these are the various philosophers. You can take a screenshot if you want. There are philosophers of freedom, there are phenomenologists, there are existentialists, there are post-structuralists, and you can see in the last column, existential humanists. Here you have Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers here. So this is the place where existential humanists had come and they had developed a kind of practical approaches because all these people, they were talking only of philosophy and they were not able to give a practical approach. They were talking only of philosophy. You have to understand it is an attitude, it is an attitude, it is an attitude. But the psychologists wanted some practical approaches. So in that way, Martin Buber was the first to give, actually, he talked about each do and each eat. So you can surf in the net about Martin Buber's philosophy. It's very famous about understanding who you are. He really talks about the conflict between the real self and the ideal self in a different language. So if you have understood Carl Rogers very clearly, it will be easy for you to understand Martin Buber very clearly. And then came Rollo May. Rollo May is basically a person who talks about the 4 ultimate concerns of existence. We will be talking. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. So if I'm going really very fast, please stop me. So I just want to give an introduction about the various topics which is here. What are philosophers of freedom, or what are phenomenologists? What are existentialists? what are post-structuralists and what are existential humanists. Philosophy of freedom, these philosophers believe that freedom always comes with responsibility. You have to take responsibility for your choices. You have the free will to choose. So it basically, you have to decide between the two things that is in front of you, because every walk of life is going to give you two choices. So this is as a continuous practice, you will understand that at a final point, you will understand that am I this or that? That is the personal identity. Am I this or that? At that time also, you have the choice, you have the free will to do whether I am this or that. But usually when you go in a progressive manner, you will understand that I'm not this, I'm that. So that is the philosophy of freedom, which talks about. I just want to give more introduction on this philosophy of freedom, because most of our today's problem ends up with this. Are we really free? Can we say that are we really free anytime? Can you ask questions of whatever I have written here and give some answer to that? Don't we feel that our freedom is limited by our social norms many times? I'm not able to wear something like what is done in Western culture. Why am I? So my freedom is limited, right? Don't we feel that our freedom is limited by our neighbors in any ways? Many times when we talk, when we shout, when we scream at the high pitch, we remember, oh, there is somebody next door, they will hear. Means that we are not free to even talk. So our freedom is limited there. Don't we feel that our freedom is limited by the customs, rituals, and various practices? Daily காலையில எந்திரிச்சோன்னா விளக்கு பொருத்தணும், so ஸ்லோகம் சொல்லணும், so கோயிலுக்கு போகணும், சர்ச்சுக்கு போகணும், தொழுவணும், இது எல்லாமே ஒரு கஷ்டம் தானே. Are we doing it with utmost sincerity as it was practiced in ancient days? Or we are just doing it as a practice? கோவில்ல போய் நின்னுட்டு கையை கும்பிட்டுட்டு அங்க இங்கேயும் பார்த்துக்கிட்டு இருந்தோம்னா then our freedom is not there. We are in the temple just because someone had forced me to go to the temple. I'm not going to the temple on my own will. And last important question, don't we feel that our freedom is limited by our own prejudices, our own experiences, our own past holdings that we are holding on? That is our prejudice, right? We have formed some opinion about some people, and when we are talking about them, or when we have a connection with them, or when we think about them, that prejudice, that past experience with that opinion that we have made about them will come into our prefrontal cortex, and we will come to a conclusion of we come to a conclusion. It is because of the prejudice that we have about that particular person. So we have to ask ourselves this question: are we ever that free ever? Do we have the courage to accept certain thing that is happening in our life? If we are able to answer those questions, that is the philosophy of freedom. And Martin Heidegger says the most thought-provoking thing in our thought-provoking time is that we are still not thinking in the right direction. We are thinking with our own prejudices. We are not thinking with an intuitive mind. We are thinking with our own prejudices. Oh, 2 2s are 4, 4 2s are 8. Why can't be 2 2s are 8? Have we ever thought that? We will be really free only when we realize the fact of our true nature and the essence of our existence. So the true nature is what? To identify that. Is it not clear? Is my internet any unstable? Is it clear? Am I audible to everyone?
It's very clear. I'm just responding to Chan, that she has to check on her side.
In my system, it is very clear and audible.
Audible. Okay. So shall I continue? Shall I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So to understand the fact of our true nature and understand that the essence of our existence is the existence itself. And that is what humanistic existentialists talked about, like given more important is the present moment and the here and now, because I'm existing in this particular moment, I'm existing. That is the reality. Last moment I existed, it became past. And in the future moment, I will exist or will not exist. Who knows? No one knows. So what is reality is this moment I am living, I am alive, I am talking, you are hearing. That essence, that is the essence of our existence, and that is the true nature of our self. Phenomenology, when you talk about, it studies the subjective experiences of people. So when they are talking about this, so I give some experience, you give some experience, other people give some experience, and it tries to find some commonality in all the experiences. So it is basically the study of various experiences is what is called as phenomenology. It observes the patterns of the experiences, and through that pattern, it tries to give a form to that consciousness which is formless. So it is focused on the systematic reflection and on the investigation of the consciousness. Basically, everyone want to understand what is that consciousness is about, which is called as the true nature. So all the meaning to the object is based or attributed to our own experience. Say suppose I don't know Hindi. How many of you know Hindi here?
Chandra doesn't know Hindi, ma'am.
I know, ma'am.
Chandra does not know Hindi. Okay. I'll give some another example. வேற ஏதாவது எக்ஸாம்பிள்? இங்க எல்லாருக்கும் தமிழ் தெரியும்ல? எல்லாருக்கும் தமிழ் தெரியும்ல இங்க?
Yes, ma'am. Of course, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. எல்லாருக்கும் தமிழ் தெரியும். Okay. Suppose I don't know Tamil. I don't know Tamil. எதிர்த்தாப்புல இருக்கிற ஒருத்தர் somebody is going to scold me with the word நாயே. And I don't know Tamil. How am I going to respond? Will I react? Will I respond? Or I will just look blank at him. He is saying something about me. It is more like அந்த மௌனராகம் படத்துல அந்த சிங்குக்கு வந்து ரேவதி இது சொல்லி கொடுப்பாங்கல்ல, டைலாக் சொல்லி கொடுப்பாங்கல்ல, அந்த மாதிரி. He does not know Tamil. She knows Tamil. So she is giving him certain examples which he is not aware of. So all the meanings to an object, if I show this is a remote, AC remote. Because I know that it is an AC remote, as soon as I show, you also understand that it is an AC remote. If I show a pen, you will understand that it is a pen, because we know, we have been intellectually taught that this is a pen. If I show a book, you are intellectually taught that it is a book. Who taught you? Who showed that? Who told you that this is a remote? How do you come to know? How have the first person who have identified this as a remote, how would he given this name to be the remote? It is all based on the experiences, right? You are going to a different place, different hotel, different room, but still you will be able to identify this is AC remote. This is mobile. That is a brand new place. You haven't ever stayed in that hotel, but still you will understand that this is bed, this is bathroom, this is almirah, and this is mirror. This is what you have to do. It is all based on the experiences that we have gathered from different places. So meanings of every object in this universe is attributed based on the experiences, and studying the pattern of these experiences, they try to study the format or the form of the consciousness. This is what is phenomenology is about. And came the existentialists. These all are pure existentialists. Jean-Paul Sartre is one of the famous existentialist philosopher. He says like he's I can call that he is damn in front of everyone. He is that blunt in putting up his philosophies. Man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. It is up to you to give a meaning. That is, it means the life. If you want to give meaning and purpose to the life, you take action. That is what Jean-Paul Sartre's philosophy is about. And he also says we do not know what we want, but yet we are all responsible for what we are, and that is the fact. That is why we say that existentialists, those who come as existentialists, there are so many existentialists, and he is one of the very famous and very blunt existentialists. He puts it like this: you are this, that's it. You have to do, that's it. That is the thing that Jean-Paul Sartre talks about. So you are responsible for what you are here. If you everything that you have, it is up to you to give meaning and purpose to your life. That is what Jean-Paul Sartre talks about. Next comes the post-structuralism. Because they were very blunt, these existentialists were very blunt, and they were very rude, rough in putting across this philosophy. Post-structuralists came that no, let us be a little bit more softer in taking out this consciousness stuff. So they focus mainly on the use of language. Language is how people use the language in different contexts. Say, for example, how are you? I can ask, how are you? Simply, Suresh sir, how are you? No, Suresh sir, sorry ma. Same, how are you? How are you? Ella nalla poitirukku pola? Sarcasm. Same, how are you, can be used in different contexts with different meanings. This post-structuralist people worked on the use of language, and they attributed the meaning to that particular word in different contexts, because they feel that change is inevitable and therefore meanings change accordingly. You cannot be the same person all the time. You evolve, you grow, you develop, and therefore your understanding of the world also develops. It differs. Therefore, you use the same word in a different context, in a different way. This is what post-structuralism talks about. Next came the existential humanists. They are called as the third force after psychoanalysis, psychodynamic approach of Freud, and behaviorism. So, third force, Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers, and you know about all these guys. And you cannot forget Viktor Frankl while we are talking about existentialism. And he always felt that we are driven by a need for better oneself. We are always driven, we are always motivated to develop our own self. That is why personality development is always very famous right from a very starting phase. So, and we are free to choose how we are going to be our personality, because personality is what we are going to throw out. And that personality is based on what is inside. சட்டியில இருந்தாதான் ஆப்பிள்ல வரும்னு சொல்லுவோம்ல, அந்த மாதிரி உள்ளுக்குள்ள என்ன இருக்கோ அதுதான் வெளியில வரும். That is what Viktor Frankl's idea is about. So it is not controlled by environment or unconscious instincts. It is about self-awareness. So if you are able to go near that self-awareness, then what you throw out will also be pure consciousness, and it will be positive. This is what existential humanists talk about. So existential therapy, when we talk about, it is not a technical approach to counseling that offers new rules. You don't need to study any rules and regulations. You don't need to study any theory for this. You just have to understand life as it is. So it is a way of understanding the client's suffering. It's just a frame of reference. The frame of reference are given at various places. So it's just an understanding of the client's suffering, and it does not offer you any rules and regulations. Jolly la or theory mein padikka vendam. அதனாலதான் நம்ம எல்லாம் ஈஸியா மார்க் எடுத்துலாம் எக்ஸிஸ்டென்ஷியலிசம்ல. ஏன்னா நம்ம படிச்சு பாஸ் பண்ணுங்கிற அவசியம் இல்லை. Okay. Therefore, it is a positive understanding of one's negatively viewed emotions, that is frustration, anxiety, isolation, meaninglessness. If you take frustration, can you ask positively any question about frustration? Can anyone ask? You know, frustration is a negative emotion. Can you put any question positively to view frustration as a positive attitude? simple question that we can put is, why am I getting frustrated? What am I going to get out of this frustration? Immediately frustration stops. Anger. Without your support, anger cannot move even a one bit. If you can put a stop there, why am I getting angry? How can I deal with this situation without getting angry? Immediately you will be able to look at the positive side of that situation. If some situation is making me angry, when I am getting angry, if I'm able to ask myself one question, why am I getting angry? What am I going to get out of this anger? How can I deal with this situation without getting anger? Then the same anger can be viewed as a positive emotion. And I can convert that entire situation to be positive. Okay. So therapist is seen as a mentor and a guide more than an authority. Mostly in all the other cognitive therapy also it is like that only. And can easily be integrated to other orientations. Easy to understand when it copy. So it is very easy for that. One thing is you have to understand existentialism correctly. Only if you understand existentialism correctly, you will know where to fit in the other theories. So you can use the other theories, you can use psychodynamics, you can use cognitive therapy, you can use behaviorism. I use many of the techniques of things. So into various cultures also you can use, because across the culture, existence is only one thing, you are existing. And the essence of existence, whether you are living in India, whether you are living in Italy, whether you are living in US, whether you are living in France, it is the same. The true nature is the same wherever you are living. So it can be easily integrated into all the cultures. The client is the central focus. For the therapy is a process in which he or she is also participating. So every client is a learning. You are also going near your own self. At the same time, you are making the client also go near his or her own self. That is what is existential therapy or psychotherapy is about. I just want to stop here before we go into Indian philosophy. And do you have any doubts still here?
Ma'am, so far clear to me, ma'am.
Very nice. Thank you.
So we have messages from the participants saying that it is clear also for them, ma'am, some of them.
Okay, nice. So now existentialism and Indian philosophy. In Indian philosophy, we take existential philosophy means we have to study the Upanishads. The word Upanishad is Upa, Ni, and Shad. Upa means to move closer, to go nearer. Shad is to sit. And Ni is the connecting word between to go nearer and sit. To go nearer what? To go nearer the truth. To go nearer the true nature of the self. To go nearer to our own true identity and sit there. So Ni is basically a connecting word between Upa and Shad. Upanishad answers all the existential questions what right from Kierkegaard and Nietzsche had asked. What is the meaning of life? Where are we going? Where are we heading? What is the purpose? Why am I here? What am I trying to do in this world? Why am I here? To understand that is what is the question answered by all the Upanishads. Essential existential questions addressed in the Upanishads are, what are we moving towards? We are born, we are grown, we are matured, we keep moving, we become evolving, we were child, we were infants, we crossed childhood, we crossed adolescent, we crossed the young adults, now we are matured adults. How do we move? Where are we moving towards? What are we doing in all these areas? Is there any end to this movement? How are we going to do? After old age, what are we going to do? What is the meaning of my life? Is there any meaning to it? Are we just born to live, reproduce, and die? Do we have anything more than this? Is there any deeper meaning more than this, that I am born, I am grown, I am I'm married, I reproduce, and I die. That is it. What are we seeking? What is our real identity? Identity crisis exists long back. So the rishis, they try to find out the answer for who we are. Because they say we are born, we grow into children, we become adolescents, we become adults. Are we the same at every age, at different stage? Do we think the same as we were thinking when we were a child? Okay. So when we were born, how are we thinking? When we were a child, how are we thinking? When we became adolescent, how are we thinking? When we became a young adult, how are we thinking? Is there any change that has taken place in my thinking processes? If so, how? And what is that one which is permanent in all the stages? When I was an infant, that was with me. When I was an adolescent, that was with me. When I was a young adult, that was with me. When I am a middle-aged person, that is going to be with me. When I become an old-age person, that is finally still going to be with me. And what is that thing which is permanent in all my stages of development? To guide us to get the answers, Upanishads give us and ask us to examine the various states of our experience. In our waking state, in our dream state, in our deep sleep states. These states are universal to everyone. You also are in the waking state. You are also in the sleep state. You also enter into the deep sleep state. So it is universal. So the Upanishads trying us to tell us, please look at the experiences that you have in these three different states. Then you will understand what is permanent and what is not permanent. And what is permanent in all the three states is your true identity. That is what Upanishad says. So simple, right? For example, there is a story in our Upanishads. It's not Upanishads. Basically, you might be knowing King Janaka, who is the father of Sita Mata. He is the Raja of Mithila. One day he's a king. He's a very famous king, and he is popularly addressed as Raja Rishi. He is popularly addressed as Raj Rishi. So he is a king. While he was sleeping in his own bedroom, you can understand he is a king, how his bedroom would be lavish. So he was sleeping in his own bedroom, and he had one dream. In that dream, he saw himself a beggar. He was wearing torn clothes. He was not having any food to eat. He was begging from door to door, and it was a very pathetic condition that he saw himself in. Once he get up, he was gasping for breath. And once he get up, he saw that he is in his bedroom, and he realizes that he is a king and he has everything around. But in the dream, when he was dreaming, he found out that he was literally not having anything, not even a single penny. He was not having food. His clothes were down. He was looking at his own clothes. Oh, now I'm wearing silk robes. But in the dream, I was wearing torn clothes, but that was very real. So he went to his guru and asked, which is real? The king Janaka, who is wearing a silk robe, is real, or the beggar Janaka, who was begging and wearing the torn clothes, is real? That was the time his guru, Yajnavalabha, he is called as Yajnavakya, he explained him about both are not real and both are real. And in both the state, there is something which is real in both the state. Try to understand that. And that is where King Janaka became Rajrishi Janaka. So if you are able to understand what is that witness which is present in my waking state when I am giving a lecture, when I am a psychologist, when I am a mother and that, and when I am sleeping and getting some dream, and who is watching that dream, that is the witness. That is the true nature of the self. When I enter into a dreamless deep sleep state, which is NREM4, which is termed as today, which our rishis called it as a dreamless deep sleep state, Sushupti. They called it as the name Sushupti. When I go into that, I don't have any thoughts. Then what happened to my senses? What happened to the knowledge that I have gathered? What happened to my intellect? Why am I not able to understand anything? And after a dreamless deep sleep state, when I get up for a fraction of a second, I don't realize where am I. I don't realize who am I. Now the question that Rishis asks is, you are sleeping. Then how are you commenting in the waking state that I had a very good sleep? Who was the one who saw that you are having a very good sleep? And that one which saw even in your sushupti is the true identity of one's self. That is what Indian philosophy talks about. Vedanta explains our true identity, that which continues through all the states, but which is unaffected by them, any of them, which is unaffected by any of them. So trying to understand what is my true identity, what am I searching for, is there an end to this becoming? These basic questions that everyone should ask to find out the essence of our existence. And that is what Indian philosophy talks about. For example, I have given just 3 Upanishads. There are 108 Upanishads which talks about this true identity. All our Upanishads talk about this true identity only. Just I have given 3 examples. Kena Upanishad answers the question, who is behind all this activity that goes on within this personality? To find one's true identity is the aim of this Upanishad. And Mandukya Upanishad, which is the smallest of all the Upanishads, it explains about the various states of consciousness and the witness in all the states as the true identity of one's self. Ishavasya Upanishad talks about that true identity is present everywhere and anywhere, and therefore, why do you worry? Let go and rejoice. Like this, every Upanishad in its own way explains that true identity which is present in all our states of consciousness, in all our states of existence. Now moving on to the psychotherapy process. So we have studied the theory in both Western and Indian philosophy. Now the psychotherapy process. In the psychotherapy process, increased awareness of the self is more important than exploring what is there in the unconscious. That is what is the existential therapy is about. We are not going to explore what is there in the unconscious as Freud was talking about. We are going to explore beyond that unconscious, that is trying to find out my true culture. Okay, you are there? Okay, let you be there. Idea is to cross the garden, not to clean the garden. Techniques in Western existential therapy, I'll just finish off very fast and we'll have some discussion at the end also. So 2-3 techniques I will explain. Rest I will just give the heading. We can discuss at a later stage. So disidentification is one of the therapy which is used in, which is one of the technique which is used in Western existential therapy. Ask yourself the question, who am I? You can take a paper and pen and write, I am, and write something on it. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, I'm a psychologist. You can write anything to you. To that I am, you can write anything. Now take one identity which you have written for yourself and reflect, how would you look like without that part of yourself? Suppose I have written, I am a psychologist. I will take that as one thing and I will reflect on, like, if I am not a psychologist, how will my life look like? Can you think of it? That reflection is what is disidentification. This is also popularly called as D-role technique. You are having one role, you are playing one role. Reflect on, if you are not that role, how would it be? Focus on what is the most important in any given moment. Next technique that is used is, instead of thinking that you make things happen, think that things happen to you. Instead of having external locus of control, try to have more internal locus of control. That is what freedom based. That is what is, this is another technique which we have talked about, the philosophy of freedom. This is up to you how to make your client to develop this internal focus of control. So you are free to choose. Develop kindness. Yearn is also a technique which is used in Western philosophy. Eat less add more joyful activities, relax your body and mind, nourish yourself with positive thoughts. So this is one technique which is used to develop kindness. I think this is quite self-explanatory. Other than that, journaling, mindfulness, developing acceptance, being grateful, altruism, pro-social activities, any kind of art, painting, crafting, music or dance, any. That's why nowadays music therapy is becoming very famous. Art therapy, music therapy is becoming very famous. Relaxation training, JPMR. Yoga is becoming very popular nowadays in Western philosophy. And volunteering activities, people are talking about, helping, giving is joy. That is what is volunteering activities, and they even celebrate Thankfulness Day and self-acceptance, and there are various worksheets available for self-acceptance or develop self-acceptance, and all kind of positive psychology techniques are used for understanding the existential essence of the existence. So existential approach is an attitude, positive mind, positive vibes, and positive life. That's Western philosophy techniques. Moving on to the techniques in Indian philosophy, practical approaches in Indian philosophy, we have two separate books, two separate complete scriptures attributed to the practical approach of finding out. Though all the Upanishads talk about the philosophy, it is all philosophy. What are the techniques? The two scriptures which talk about the techniques itself are the Yoga Darshana and the Sankhya Darshana. Yoga Darshana, as you all know, it is written by sage Patanjali and it has 8 limbs of yoga: yamas, niyamas, asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So when you follow all this, it has various disciplines. It has a set of rules and regulations to be followed. So I will be talking about some techniques based on yamas and niyamas and asanas and pranayamas also in this PowerPoint. And Sankhya Darshana is given by sage Kapila. The goal of Sankhya philosophy itself is freedom from the pain and sufferings. It believes that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. But still, to be free from the pain and suffering is the entire goal of Sankhya philosophy. He talks about 3 pains, 3 types of pain. One is physical pain, one is psychological and emotional pain, and another is spiritual pain. To elevate yourself from the physical pain, he talks about 5 things that help. I am not giving, it is all given by sage Kapila in Sankhya philosophy. Anyone who has the book, you can go and check. So physical pain, to elevate yourself from the physical pain, 5 things are very important to overcome any kind of physical pain. Proper diet, proper exercise, balanced conduct and behavior, going to bed on time and waking up on time. That is why I said I didn't say this. It is all said by sage Kapila very long back. Okay. And then psychological and emotional pain. To come out of this, sage Kapila had said that this type of suffering needs help from both outside and inside. When you are psychologically distressed or emotionally distressed, it has to be addressed by both outside as well as inside. From inside, changing your attitude towards your own self, trusting and believing in your own self, developing your self-confidence, developing your self-esteem, that creates a psychological support. And coming to the outside, which is the body, one has to use these things. So this combined with the external measures, that is the physical, this one, helps to overcome any kind of sorrow and grief. So the first 4 limbs of yoga addresses the mental and the emotional suffering. The first 4 limbs are yamas, niyamas, asanas, and pranayamas. Next comes the spiritual pain that Sankhya talks about. To overcome the spiritual pain and suffering, dive deep into yourself to understand who you are. So work toward removing all non-essentials that is not your true self. And the way to do this is covered by the last 4 limbs of yoga, that is the meditative aspects, which are the purest form of yoga and all internal. Sankhya has its own explanation about how to elevate yourself from the spiritual pain. That is all complete philosophy. You have to understand that. Okay. And yamas and niyama based techniques are following truthfulness, that is manasa, vacha, and karma. It's nothing but your authenticity, what Carl Rogers was talking about. Congruence and authenticity. Let that be in line between what you think, what you speak, and what you do. You think something, you speak something, and you do something, then it does not work. And Following non-violence. Following non-violence means following the principles of ahimsa. Ahimsa here is not hurting your own energy as well, and not hurting your own energy with your negative thoughts. Hurting others should also be not there. Hurting your own energy with your negative thoughts should also be there, should also be not there. That is also considered as himsa. If I'm going to have negative thought, if I'm going to get sad, then I'm hurting my own energy. That is also hinsa. That is what Upanishads or yoga talks about. Following moderation in all the activities, whatever activity you do, whether you eat, whether you buy something, whatever you do, following moderation in all the activities. Feeling contented with what you have, listing out what are the positive qualities that you have. I also want to be like Aishwarya Rai, but I am who I am. No, understanding who I am and trying to look at the positive qualities of what I am built with and working on that is what is feeling contented. And being thankful, maintaining a thankfulness note. Here I am purposefully not use the word journal because here my masters used to tell us, just maintain 2 things which you are thankful for in life. And don't repeat that 2 things for at least 30 days next. So you think of various positive things in your life to be thankful for. Life has given you so much of things that you are grateful for in life, which you are not looking at. And we are every time cripping on something what we are not having. So write just 2 things in your life which you are thankful for, and don't repeat those 2 things at least for a minimum of next 30 days. Put your 100% in whatever work you do. That is what Bhagavad Gita talks about. Do your duty with a smile. Don't wait for your consequences. Karam karo kartamat brano. That is, do your duty. Don't expect that consequences. When you expect, then there is a fear of failure. The entire Bhagavad Gita is about the fear of failure. When another time when we meet, if we have the time, I will talk about that. And then engaging in volunteering activities, any kind of volunteering activities you can engage, and taking time to study the self, trying to understand who I am, self-awareness worksheets, self-acceptance worksheets, you can write and understand. D-roll technique you can use here. And then surrendering to the higher supreme. That is very important, that understanding that, I am not the one who is doing all these things. When I have understood that, then why worry? Let go and rejoice is one yama and yama based technique as well. Pranayama based techniques, there are various kinds of pranayama. You might have come across various pranayamas in your life as well. I have listed some pranayamas here. Abdominal breathing, chest breathing, balloon breathing, simha breathing, dog breathing, deep breathing, Bastrika, Kapalabhati, alternate nostril breathing, and Brahmari pranayama. Out of this balloon breathing is very, very useful. I will teach you at the end how to do the balloon breathing. And then meditation based techniques, breath awareness. There are various kinds of meditation. I would call it as mindfulness rather than meditation. Breath awareness, thought focusing, which is always called as a mindfulness meditation. This is what is Vipassana meditation as well. Mantra meditation is you take one mantra and keep on repeating that mantra mentally again and again, and that is also considered as a mindfulness. Sense awareness meditation. You take one sense and say, for example, you close your eyes and take the sense of hearing. After closing your eyes, can you, with your hearing sense, what all the sound that you can hear near you? So this is sense awareness meditation. There are 5 sense awareness meditation is also there with visualization and very advanced places, which is visualization meditation, where we make use of all the 5 senses and do visualization. That is also a kind of meditation. Sound meditation is basically you listen to some bhajans and close your eyes and keep yourself observed into that bhajans. Om mantra, Om chanting, Om Namah Shivaya, any music, any melodious music. For that instance, you can just keep on and close your eyes and get yourself observed into that music. That is what is sound meditation. Body scan meditation, trying to understand, the various parts of the body, being aware of various parts of the body and relaxing them. Zen meditation is just be, just sit where you are. This is what in Tamil it is written as Anbe Sivam என்று அறிந்தபின் அன்பே சிவமாய் அமர்ந்திருந்தோரே அப்படின்னு ஒரு பாட்டு உண்டு. I don't know how many of you know. அன்பே சிவமாவது யாரும் அறிகிலர், அன்பே சிவமாவது யாரும் அறிந்தபின் அன்பே சிவமாய் அமர்ந்திருந்தோரே அப்படின்னு திருமந்திரத்துல திருமூலர் ஒரு பாட்டு எழுதியிருப்பாரு. That is to understand just I am nothing but that and sit like that, just be. Okay. And then Vipassana meditation, I have already talked about. Chakra meditation is also becoming very famous in the Western philosophy now, which is talked about Kundalini yoga and other stuffs. Applications, you can apply this therapy with patients who are dealing with any phase of life issue, any phase of problems in their personal development, in their relationship, in their finance, in their career, in their well-being, in their physical environment, in their work environment, wherever they are finding any kind of problem, you can apply this therapy process. And it is appropriate for any clients who are struggling with coping with disappointments in life and fear, identity crisis in adolescence, grief counseling, low self-confidence, feelings of inadequacy, stress, tension, social anxiety, PTSD. You can keep on adding health anxiety, you can add here. And also in any kind of major psychological disorders, which we call it as mental illnesses. There also you can use this existential therapy. How we can use this in development of maladaptive behavior is due to the result of ineffective coping style with anxiety. See, we have to accept that we have to live with some kind of anxiety, which we consider as basic anxiety. So that basic anxiety, I'm trying to cope up with certain coping style. So ineffective coping style is the result of maladaptive behavior. That is what existentialism says. It's this, when we are confronting the ultimate concerns of death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. Existentialism talks about these are the 4 ultimate concerns. We have fear of death. Sometimes we feel that we are not free to do certain things. So freedom, we always feel that I am alone. And we always have a question that why am I here? What is the meaning of my life? So these ultimate concerns are the 4 things that you need to address, because of which all the psychological disorders arise. That is what existentialism talks about. So all the concerns of your client has to be infused with these 4 concerns, and most of the problem end up with freedom. You take, for example, claustrophobia, which is fear of closed space. Why does a person, as an existential therapist, how would I view that claustrophobia is? Why am I having that fear of closed space? Because I have a fear that I will get suffocated and I will die. So that is a fear of death. Why a person is having fear of heights? When I go up, somehow my hands and legs are trembling, I will fall down, I will die. Why am I having a fear of water? Because I feel that if I go into the water, there will be somewhere I will get caught up in swirls and then I will drown and die. So at the end of that, all the fear, what is there? Exaggeration, if you use. The exaggeration comes to an end that I have a fear that I will die. That is the cause of the pure existential crisis. And that is where I try to protect myself with resilience. No, I will not do this. I will not do that. Say, for example, social figure, social anxiety is there. I'm not able to meet people and talk to people. Why? Because I have a fear of criticisms. Why I have a fear of criticism? Because I have a fear of failure. Why I have a fear of failure? Because I have my own pride. I have my own identity. That is what Vairagya Bhav, which is talked in Indian philosophy. Vairagya Bhav is karam karo karta mat bano. Do your duty with utmost concentration. Don't worry about the consequences. Okay, so that is what is, and you are never isolated. You are always with your conscious self, and that true identity is always with you. Then you will not feel yourself to be isolated. Even if somebody is considering that entire COVID lockdown is isolated, my master says, why do you see it as isolation? See it as solitude. and be with yourself more. Try to find the purpose and meaning of your life more. Actually, I had used it and I have found that to be very, very useful. So goals of existential therapy in any psychological disorder, name any psychological disorder, what are the goals? Helps the client to positively live with the anxiety. There is no zero stress environment. There is no zero level of anxiety. One has to have, even which we call it as eustress. Positive stress is very important in life for a drive, for a motivation. I need that for my instincts. So live positively with that anxiety that we possess. Become aware of avoidance strategies. Ask yourself, am I in denial mode? And then explore the internal experiences leading to the maladaptive behavior. Like I asked you, why am I getting angry? What am I going to get out of this anger? How can I control this situation without getting angry? If I am frustrated, why am I frustrated? Trying to explore the internal experiences while you are having any kind of negative emotions and reaching to the fullest potential. I cannot stop myself from quoting Nirvana Shatakam here, where Adi Shankaracharya talks about, I am not the mind, I am not the buddhi, I am not the senses, I am not the body, I am not the gross things, I am not the subtle things. Then who am I? At every point he says, I am nothing but the Satchidananda Rupam Shivoham Shivoham. That is, I am nothing but that which is present in everywhere, in every place. And that is the true essence of my existence. If I am able to understand that, then I will be able to understand what is this, because that is what is this, and this is what is that. It focuses on how subjective experiences play a major role in substance use behavior. This application of existential therapy I have given only in substance abuse disorder. Like this, you can use delusional disorder, you can use schizophrenia. So substance use disorder, how that subject experience, the compulsive substance usage is viewed as a psychological process rather than a behavioral problem. Because that the client is not able to accept certain existential issues, the client has taken up that substance use as a temporary relief. So existential perspective enhances the substance prevention. Whenever any substance addiction client comes to me, I never tell him that you should stop taking the whatever you are taking. Keep taking. Do these pranayamas. Do these breathing techniques. With that, insight automatically develops and he himself will take a decision that I don't need this substance anymore. When you stop him compulsively, you should not drink, then he is not going to drink, he is not going to stop it throughout his life. But if an insight comes from within that I should not do it, then that is the permanent insight that anyone can have. And I have come across this and I have used this even to schizophrenic clients and I am still using it. Major focus on existential therapy is being in the world, self-transcendence, ability to transcend beyond the self, to understand that I'm not just the body, I'm not just the mind who I think, I'm beyond all these things, trying to find out that. Transcendental meditation is a very good example of this. Authenticity, holding a realistic perspective of oneself, others, and the world. Taking responsibility for who you are and who you become. Everywhere it is my responsibility, so choose wisely. Function is infuse ultimate concerns in whatever topic you discuss. Take any topic we can discuss based on the ultimate concerns, which are the death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. Every problem in the universe can be attributed to these four things. Basically, Sankhya talks about it is only the fear. Only the fear which is responsible for the entire abnormal category of behaviors. Help turn suffering into productive and positive pursuits. Explores clients' assumptions about the world, challenges to examine the value systems. It helps develop clients' will to act and take responsibility of the choices. Thank you so much.
Lakshmi ma'am,
Question.
that's what I'm going to tell ma'am. It was a breathtaking performance, I should say. very astonishing, very profound, insightful, informative, and whatnot, ma'am. From what you said, what I understand is it is not just an easy thing, ma'am, because philosophy is always a difficult and a far thing from for any one of us. But you have made it so simple to understand. At least we take away that we have to take care of being free and responsible for what we are. That message is really conveyed, and so nice of you, ma'am. And you have been very bold and beautiful today. Thank you for that. So now it is time for the participants to interact with ma'am or react to her presentation. You're most welcome.
Ma'am, shall I ask a question, ma'am? Actually, what you have said, I listen to it, ma'am. I don't say I fully understood, but I don't say I'm very blank. Just I get it. I will go through this. I will rewind and rewind and rewind. I will get, as you shared, I will get my insight about this. What my question here is, I just I understood the existential theory little better. How it is applied to my clients. Now I'm asking. You are saying in substance abuse, you are saying them not to stop the substance abuse. You are asking them to do the meditation. Like if they coming with any problem, we just listen out them and we just okay leave it, keep it that in a side. You do these techniques, these pranayamams and these everything, and we will explain them about these existential theories. You just relax. We have some superior powers like that. We will give some insights to them. No,
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 no. Actually, we
confused.
don't give insights to them because the insights has to be developed in them.
Okay.
We should not give insights. Say, I understood your question. Basically, when some client is coming to you, I have understood this, how I'm going to apply this to my client, right? Okay. So suppose a client is coming to me with low self-confidence. Okay, low self-confidence, unable to face like something, any low confidence, like I'm not able to immediate attack.
Shall I say a situation, ma'am?
Yeah.
If your boy or somebody they are facing a interview problem, facing a person.
Okay, interview problem. I'm not able to face the interviewer, and I'm having an interview. I have say an interview after a week, and I have anxious developing now. So that is where I am seeking a professional help, and the client is coming to me. So what I would say is I will understand the problem. I will talk to him as a normal counseling procedure. I will gather data. I will collect his questionnaires to understand his anxiety level, his depression level, his mental health, everything I will do. And I will understand his we always proceed in all the counseling session. I understand his economic status. I understand everything. I will understand. Now, why is he going to face the interview? Because he wants, let us suppose that he wants a career change, and that opportunity, that is a bigger opportunity. He is getting a higher package, and that is why he wants to change. And naturally, it's what we all will say. So he is having a fear. Now, how will I attribute it? He is having a fear of failure. Why is he less confident? Because he is having a fear of failure. If I lose this, what will happen? In that fear, that individual is not able to put his 100% in the interview. This I will make him understand. I will not talk to him the existential theory because that will go over his head. For him, the problem is very real. So we have to focus and address only on the problem. Why are you now afraid of taking that interview? Basically, you are having a fear of fear. Are you right? Yes, ma'am, I am right. Everyone is going to say that. Why do you have that fear of failure? Why do you have that fear of failure, ma'am? In that interview, I failed. In this interview, I failed. That is all your past experiences, right? Why don't you think that you will pass in this interview? He is looking, see, from his answers only, I'm going to take the question. Whatever his problem, I'm going to ask question in such a, that is why in anger, like the question that I put you in anger. Why am I getting angry? Anger management. Suppose some person comes to me that I'm getting so much of angry, I'm not able to handle situations, I'm getting irritated for all reasons. Yeah. So to that person, if I'm going to ask him, can you reflect on why do you get angry at different situations? That is a miracle question which we ask him. He start reflecting, he start thinking, and he will start viewing the problem from a different perspective. Then you are okay. You are done with your job then. To make it consistent, I use certain pranayama technique. As I told you, I will teach you the balloon breathing today. Keep your right hand on your stomach. Just blow out through your mouth. As you blow out, you can feel that your tummy is getting deflated. Going inside. Balloon madri, balloon la kaatha edukkira mari balloon ulla pogum. Whenever you are in any kind of anxiety-provoking situation or fear-provoking situation, you follow this blowout, close your eyes and follow this 5 or 6. Immediately, you can feel that your parasympathetic division is getting activated. Whenever you are in fear or anxiety, your cortisols are secreted more. Your sympathetic division is working more. That is why you are getting anxious, because more of cortisols. You are not knowing what to do with that cortisols. So to counter it, I have to use my parasympathetic division. Whenever I have any anxiety-provoking situation or fear-provoking situation, I just close my eyes and do 5 or 6 balloon breathing. And you can immediately feel that the cortisol secretion is instantly stopped and you will feel a relaxed wave that is flowing in your mind. And then drink a glass of water. I will see to it. Let me see it. The courage you will develop. You will have the courage only when you are relaxed. You will have the courage only when you are having clarity of thought. The clarity of thought and relaxation are in complementary to each other.
Ma'am, here we need to ask them questions. They need to search for the answer and they need to come out of that. This is
Yes.
more important. We don't
Yes.
give the answers in their plate. They need
No.
to search for them. Okay.
Yes, we are not spoon feeding them.
Yes.
Suppose as a substance abuse client is coming and he is an alcoholic, he drinks. I gather all the details. I find out, because I need to structure a therapy session for him. So I find out all the details. How much he is drinking, when all he is drinking, what all the situations that make him drink more. Is he able to stabilize himself after drinking, or he is going out of his control when he is drinking? All these questions I will understand. And then I will ask him, so you want to come out of this problem, right? Yes, ma'am, I want to come out of this problem because now I understand that it is affecting me and my family. Very good. So you have understood that. But you are not able to stop it because it has become a habit in you. When it has become a habit in you, how do you think that within one session I will be able to take it that? That way I have made it clear that, dear, you have to come to me again and again for various sessions. Okay. And second thing is, I will put you in certain techniques. Keep doing the techniques. I'm not telling, he will immediately ask me, so today I will stop drinking. I said, I didn't tell you, you will have withdrawal symptoms. Why do you want to stop? Don't stop. Keep drinking whatever you want to drink. Added to whatever you are drinking, do whatever I'm saying. And I will put him in certain breathing techniques. There are some heavy breathing techniques which will stop that thought of, because that is a compulsive behavior. There is one obsession which is inside his mind, because of which he is drinking, which he is not unaware now, because now he is addicted. So when he starts doing those heavy pranayamas, what happens? Automatically, after a week, he himself will very happily will come and say, ma'am, you know something? I have reduced the intake of alcohol. Very good, Sabash. Keep doing one more time. Okay. As he keeps on doing this breathing techniques, he himself will develop, and after 3 months, he will come and say, ma'am, it is because of you I have come out of this de-addiction. So I said, no, it is not because of me. You did that breathing exercises, because everywhere I should de-roll myself. It is not me who have done it. Karam karo, karta mat bano. When I am preaching that, I should follow that. I'm just doing my duty. It is you who had put the efforts, because of which you had come out of it. So congratulations. Keep moving in life like this and make this as a lifestyle, because I'm going to give him only pranayamas, which is going to do good only for him. So to come out of the addiction, he was using it like 3 times a day, 2 times a day, as per my prescriptions. Now to make it as a lifestyle, do at least once a day. So you have clarity, your parasympathetic division is completely active, and you are clear, you are relaxed. Whatever I have tried to condense in this 1 hour is just food for thought. Just food for thought. You have to work on it more.
Thank
I'm
you,
making a
Lakshmi ma'am.
separate course also on existential therapy.
Yeah, I forgot to mention about that. She's the founder and director of Mind Care Foundation at New Perangolathur, Chennai. So if you want to put on the website and see Mind Care India and Dr. Lakshmi Rajan, she'll be on the top. Okay. So you can all read and know more about her and what she's doing. Ma'am, I have got one question, ma'am. You were telling about clarity and courage and the concept, ma'am. So we are clear about what's happening, but where the courage is withheld is you don't want to hurt the other person who is really a dear one or loved one for you. You know that what it's happening to you or to the others is not right, and you want to intervene, but you feel like you don't want to hurt them and you just like remain silent. What do you think about that behavior and what to do?
Yeah. Say, for example, you have a friend, very close friend, very, very close friend, and she has got a haircut. Just I'm giving as an example. This you can use it in any of your life situations. She has got a haircut and she is coming to you. Thank you so much. After an hour. So she has got a haircut and she is asking you because you are her well-wisher and you are very close to her. She is coming with so much of enthusiasm. Hi Chandra, I've got a new haircut. How do I look? She is coming with so much of energy and asking that you are going to praise her. And you know very well that that haircut is not at all suiting her. And you don't want to hurt her by saying that, see, not at all nice. What you have done to your hair means that you are very blunt. You are hurting her and you, she will get hurt. Instead of saying that, you can say, wow, it's nice, but the earlier one was suiting you better. You didn't hurt your energy. You are truthful. You have also made the other person realize that, have I done anything wrong by cutting my hair?
Cool, ma'am. Cool. Actually, we have to practice this, but it needs a lot of energy, ma'am, because it is straight to tell something to you know, it's not nice, but you have to tell 10 different words to say it is not nice.
Exactly.
You know, it needs more energy.
Yes.
So let me gain more energy and enthusiasm to handle things in life. Thank you, ma'am.
It's just when you practice it as an existential therapy, only therapist, you have to practice yourself on first. You are your own subject. To become an existential therapist, you are your own subject, because I have to understand and let go and accept the negativities that I have within me. Will I be able to accept that I am having anger? Will I be able to accept that I am frustrated? Will I be able to accept that I get stressed anymore? You are a counselor. Why are you getting stressed out? Many people ask me, because I am a counselor, should I not get stressed? I'm also an individual.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any questions from the group?
Ma'am, it was a wonderful session.
Can you please wait till Muthu sir finish and then you will take a chance, okay? Good.
So right from the beginning, it has been wonderful, ma'am. Like, you gave a very good start with different theories, and step by step you took us into the complete, almost for me, I feel I got a big overview of the bird's eye view of the complete existentialism theory. So
Thank you so much.
Few doubts I have got. Like I have been, for me, the ultimate inspiration in the world is, or in the universe, is Bhagavad Gita. So whatever you
By?
said, Bhagavad Gita, I mean,
Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, Bhagavad Gita. Okay.
the ultimate inspiration for me is Bhagavad Gita.
Hmm.
So whatever existential theory, like the technique which you explained till now, it's by and large covered in Bhagavad Gita. Like I understand, even Upanishad, a complete Upanishad has been wrapped up in a small book. It is Bhagavad Gita.
Mm.
So when such a thing has originated in our country, why we are not able to follow? Like whatever you said, it is there in our philosophy, in our own the ancient.
Sir, if you take the Bhagavad Gita itself, at the end of each chapter, it finishes like Idi Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Arjuna Samvade, Upanishatsu, Yoga Shastre. So it means that it gives the essence of all the Upanishad as well as the Yoga Shastra together is what is Bhagavad Gita. Why are we not practicing it? Then we have to ask ourselves that question. Because it ends up in some kind of debate, and I think Chandra will come and beat me. Because why are we not following it? Basically, we have one word I can say, that we feel that our things are very inferior, and what is coming from the European country is what is superior. For everything, we need their proof. They have made it very clear that what you have is nothing. Whatever we are giving is what is superior and things. I think still we have not come out of that attitude. And we need at one point of time, at least we need to understand that no, we have more superior things than what they are giving us. And that is why still we are following the mindfulness techniques which are coming from there, rather than following the Purushottama Yoga and the Sankhya Yoga and the Karma Yoga and the Jnana Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. It is a speck. Mindfulness meditation is a speck of what is there in Bhagavad Gita. Not even a speck I can call. It's a fraction of the speck of what is there in Bhagavad Gita. But we need that proof. If somebody from that approves that, yeah, Bhagavad Gita is a good thing, then we will, oh, yeah, Bhagavad Gita is a good thing. If somebody has to approve from that, Tirumula Tirumandram is very good. Tirukural is very good. Bogar 7,000, Bogar 4,000, it has so much of medical things in it. Then we will, then only we will go and search where is that Bogar 4,000. It is in your own kitchen. You have to find out what is there in your own kitchen. Then going and getting it from malls.
Ma'am,
It's like
thank you, ma'am, for this answer. It is very convincing. I realized, yes, we lack confidence in our own assets. That is one
More
reason.
research has to be done on this area, on the Indian philosophy, and more research has to be documented. We have spoken about this I have spoken about this to Suresh sir also, that we have to document all these things, because whatever I am working, it is based on Indian philosophy and Yoga Darshana and Sankhya philosophy only. And by God's grace and Guru's grace, I'm able to clear more of the schizophrenic and delusional clients as well, hallucinating clients as well, within 3 sessions or 4 sessions or 5 sessions. That has to be documented, which is what I'm talking to him on that.
Now, how to bring in a mass awareness, that because if you see, especially in this pandemic, and maybe in another few months, India is going to have a severe mental health problems. So if we just bring in awareness, kind of revolutionary thought on the Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, that itself might solve most of the problems.
True.
So is there any way?
Teach the children, the younger children, our own grandchildren, teach them to respect our own culture. Teach right from the beginning, put them into some kind of cultural activities. For example, வாசல் தெளிச்சு கோலம் போடுறதுன்ற ஆக்டிவிட்டியே இன்னைக்கு தேதியில நிறைய பொண்ணு பசங்களுக்கு இல்லையே. It has got so much of value added to it. நம்ம சிரிக்கிறதுக்காக அது பண்ணலையே. காலையில எந்திரிக்கணும் 4:30 மணிக்கு you have good amount of oxygen in the air, and you start your day with Padahastasana. Because bend down பண்ணி நீங்க பெருக்கினாதான் it happens. And there is a lot of activity that happens to your hips and your muscles. The entire system gets activated. No lady was doing Surya Namaskar in the early ancient days, no. My party and all was not doing Surya Namaskar. But she was performing all this. வீடு பெருக்கி தொடக்கிறது. இன்னைக்கு மாப்பு இல்லாம நம்மளால தொடக்க முடியுமா? I cannot do. கீழே உட்காந்து நம்ம பாட்டி தொடச்ச மாதிரி துணியை புளிஞ்சு கீழே ஸ்குவாட் பொசிஷன்ல உட்காந்து நம்மளால அப்படி இப்படி பண்ணி நம்ம பின்னால போக முடியுமா? I did once when I was a child. இன்னைக்கு due to the habit, I'm not able to do. When I was young kid, my mother used to make me do this till my marriage. Till I got married, my mother-in-law used to make me do bonsai like this only. And there were no tiles. It was only cemented or single.
So maybe we can ask Dr. Chandra to ask people in the UK to do all these things, take a film and then give it to us.
அடிக்க வந்துருவாங்க எல்லாரும்.
Sir,
Let
Muthu
us
sir, I
start
wanted
one
to.
by one. Simple things.
No, actually, ma'am, it is ikkarikku akkara pacha. When people will know both sides, then you will know what it is actually. It is.
இல்ல நம்ம
some
அங்க
people-
அவங்கள செய்ய சொல்றதுக்கு நம்ம வீட்ல இருக்கிற பிள்ளைங்களை செய்ய சொல்லுவோம். ஃபர்ஸ்ட் டைல்ஸ் ஹவுஸ் கிரானைட் போட்டுருவோம். அதுல நம்மளால முதல்ல நம்ம பிள்ளைங்களை வீடு பெருக்க சொல்ல முடியுதா? நம்ம பிள்ளைங்க நம்ம பேச்ச கேக்குதா? If we ask ourselves that question. என் பொண்ணு என் பேச்ச கேட்க மாட்டா. காலையில வீடு பெருக்கடி அப்படின்னா வேக்கம் போட்டுறமா அப்படிம்பா.
No, but if we see,
Muthu sir, I'm sorry to stop here. It's a kind note to all of us here. Please don't mistake. We have another session to be hosted on the same platform in another 20 minutes. So if you have something to talk really quick, we'll have the last few minutes so we can wind up. Sorry. And you can always be open to discuss in the group. Yeah. I hope you all understand. Thank you very much. Jabba, do you have something to say?
Please, 5 minutes. Please, if you can leave me, I have another session at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
Ma'am is
whatever
also
you want to ask, you can ask me. I will share this PowerPoint in the group, that psychotherapeutic workshop, whatever. I will share this PowerPoint there. And I will share another PowerPoint and my YouTube video where I'm talking about yoga for respiratory health and immunity. As Muthu sir asked, like, இன்னைக்கு இருக்கக்கூடிய COVID situationல it's going to face a lot of health problems. So if they can use, I have also mentioned certain techniques for that, and the techniques அதுல கொடுத்திருக்கிற மாதிரி நீங்க follow பண்ணலாம். And other than that, any questions you have, you can do, let me know. Thank you so much, Yellow Pond Counseling and Research Center. Yeah, Jabba, you have some question? I'm so sorry. One question, please. Please. You are not audible.
And you're closing your lips as well, so we can't read you
Amma.
also. Can you type it, Jabba, or type it in the group? Ma'am would help in answering that, yeah?
Yeah, you type it
Sorry,
in the group,
it's a
I will
tech-
answer.
technology
See, I
problem.
am very bad in typing. I might give voice messages.
Ma'am, you're too good in voice, ma'am, voicing out. We really
Oh,
love
thank
it.
you so much.
It was like Kada Kalathaipam only, I should say.
ஐயோ அவ்வளவா இருந்தது.
அவ்வளவு இருந்தது ma'am. அதனால தான் we couldn't stop talking about it. Otherwise, you know, we don't have more questions or more things to discuss. Ma'am, you are really awesome, superb. Whatever exaggerated words I can put, that you completely deserve it for today's session. Thank you so much on behalf of the Red Pond Educational and Psychological Research Center and Yellow Pond Counseling Center for accepting our invite and being really flexible to choose the time. Thank you so much, and we hope to be associated with you in the near future as well.
Thank you so
So
much,
thank you,
Red Pond
Professor.
and Yellow Pond Research and Counseling Centers. And thank you, Suresh sir. Thank you, Chandra. Thank you, Dr. Subhashri. Thank you. Thank you so many people. I don't know who all are involved in that. Thanks for all to give me this opportunity to share very little knowledge that I have.
Thank you, ma'am. If you have got a small assignment, just post it in the group of what you really want the
List of
participants to do.
assignments I have got, I will post it. List of assignments
Okay.
I have got, I will post it.
Okay, ma'am. So we're going to be really flooded, not just with the technique, but also with assignments. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So happy to see all the cheerful faces today. See you all tomorrow for the last session of a workshop on dialectical behavioral therapy. See you all tomorrow, the same time, the same links. Yeah. Until then, have a nice evening. See you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.